Like many videos on this channel, I never envisioned myself deciding to make them until, I do make them, but I guess this is a continuing trend. Regardless, I, like many of you, have seen the Selena Gomez video where she's bawling out crying about, Trump's current immigration policies and his border czar, quote unquote, Tom Homan going into communities and doing the quote unquote catch and release programs, and basically how she's saying that the Hispanic community is attacked and there's nothing she can do and she's going to try her hardest or something like that. Um, Regardless of her stance and your stance on immigration, I thought it was pretty pathetic, nonetheless. I thought it was a cheap attempt at virtue signaling, which is something I talk about a lot. For those of you who don't know, virtue signaling is just basically the idea of saying something that sounds noble and respectful and, admired by many people with the intent of benefiting yourself. I think Family Guy does a very good example. There's this one clip in when Lois Griffin goes, 9/11 was bad, 9/11, 9/11. Just pointing out, like, you know, these statements that are meant to arouse, congratulatory and applaud, just to um, solicit, clout points or personal benefit, basically. Um, that is not to say I don't doubt that what she's feeling is very real. I think she does have a lot of emotion. Obviously, that's why she's posting it. But I think somewhat subconsciously, a lot of people, a lot of politicians especially, think your AOCs of the world kind of state a lot of jarring and provocative things in order to, like I said, earnestly benefit themselves. Um, but yeah, and Republicans are as guilty of this is not a one-sided thing, of course. So with that being said, you talk about immigration. I talk a lot about immigration on this channel because, I grew up around mostly, if not all, immigrants. My congressional district is unique in that it boasts, I think, one of the most foreign-born populations in all of America, and I work with a lot of immigrants as an intern and all these beautiful things that I think have given me a good perspective on, what to talk about and how Trump is carrying out what he's doing. First and foremost, um, Trump is not, this is not a curveball. If anybody who is paying attention to Trump's rhetoric, this is what it included. And I think the vast majority of Americans are not stupid, and I think they understood that, and that's why they voted for him. Whether or not you agree with what he's saying and what he's doing is up to you, of course. But to say that this is a complete shock as to, oh my God, he's doing all these things, he's deporting all these people, it's not a shock. I mean, that's Trump for you. And then with that being said, I see a lot of misconceptions out there that a lot of people who are maybe their family members are undocumented, that risks them being deported as well. That's not entirely true. Thomas Homan talked about his top-down approach where he's going for, you know, criminals, convicted criminals or criminals on the loose, on bail, whatever the case is, who are illegal, and, going for them first and then deporting them. And then he has this term with what he calls collateral, right? So if you're also an undocumented person right next, caught in between the government's attempt to, catch the illegal criminal or whatever the case is, then you are at risk of being deported as well. You know what? I don't know if this is controversial to say this, but it kind of just makes sense. I mean, if you apply from a basic law enforcement standpoint, if you are in the midst of catching someone, like the common example, if you pull over a car because their license plate is dangling or it's unlegible or whatever, you pull them over and you make them roll down the window and you smell paraphernalia. Let's say it's weed or any drug that's considered contraband. You have then you know, probable cause to go ahead and, make an arrest, even though your intentions weren't necessarily to, find someone or cite someone in violation of a unlegible license plate. So, from a law enforcement standpoint, how this country works, it's also not a curveball with what Tom Homan's doing. Now, with that being said, I feel like the media, especially, just to arouse clicks and views, um, you know, makes it so that you can either fall on one or the other side of the argument to say, hey, look, it's either, you have sympathy for these people, and if you have sympathy, then you're a good person and you want these people to stay. That's like what the left will tell you. And if then you're on the right, you say, no, you want to get rid of all of these illegals because they're harming our society. But believe it or not, like with many things in America, it's not a black and white issue. I know, surprise, surprise. I take the stance of say, hey, look, we can have sympathy for immigrants. It would be pretty hypocritical of me to not have sympathy, right? Um, Most immigrants that come to this country don't commit as many crimes as legal residents and just want some economic benefit. They just want to contribute to America, be a part of the culture, you know, make a name for themselves, get a nice house, just like anyone else. That's what the American dream's all about. But, left or right, Democrat or Republican, I think you can agree that the current legal immigration system is flawed. However, is it possible to fix the legal immigration system whilst also not cracking down on all the illegal immigrants in this country? You know, so I think, if I had the magic wand, knowing what I know, interacting with the people I do, I would say, hey, look, all these people with criminal charges, you're out. If you're in the crossfire, if you get caught as an illegal, immigrant next to these criminals, you probably should be out too. There are obviously very few cases where, things differ. But now this is where I draw the line, which many of my Republican counterparts may disagree. If you have been here in this country for a certain amount of years, let's say 5 or 10, or wherever you draw that number, a good amount of time, you haven't committed a crime, you paid your taxes, you are an economic benefit to the country, then you should be put into a special sort of DACA-ish kind of thing where, you can get your pathway to citizenship. The whole point of an immigrant is to come to the country to benefit the country. It's a win-win, right? The immigrant brings their talents and their economic resources to the country, and the country provides a safe haven for the immigrant to prosper and start a new life that they couldn't have done otherwise in their previous, country. So, knowing Trump, if he does claim to say what he does, the whole idea of quote unquote American first, if you truly were about that, you would stick to my script. I'm not saying I'm like the number one correct answer. I still don't know a lot of my positions on immigration. But obviously, get rid of the criminals. If there's collateral, put them into a special box. But for the most people who have been here 5 to 10 years, there has to be a structural. Maybe it's a new department. Maybe Elon Musk could run it. I'm just joking. But a path to citizenship. And once you gotten rid of most, if not all, the criminals in this country that came here illegally, then you could start to say, okay, finally, once we solve this wound, now let's make sure this doesn't happen again. Let's revitalize and make the immigration process much more easier and much more efficient. Trump has given me no reason to doubt him, although in his first administration he wasn't very successful in a lot of things. I don't doubt him in the sense where he hasn't come out and said blankly, like, I'm going to deport every illegal, whether they're a criminal or not, whether they've been staying here for 10 years, whether they're waiting for their papers to be approved or something like that. So I think Trump does see the idea of economic benefit. I mean, we saw what he did with Colombia and all that stuff. But lastly, I want to end off with this. Um, I think for a successful immigration, a successful person to immigrate to this country, two things need to happen. One, and I think this is more obvious. You need the community as to which you're immigrating to have open arms. I know a lot of people who immigrated to this country who've been bullied, prejudiced, you know, felt ashamed to come to this country, even though they were legal, um, by the people around them. So if that doesn't happen, it's not really a successful immigration, in my opinion. And number two, the immigrant themselves needs to be willing to have open arms to say, hey, look, I'm ready to be a part of this American culture. I have my own practices, my own communities, my own enclaves, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, these are common traits that we all share as Americans. Belief in a democracy, a secular government, such and so forth. So there's two things. Very rarely do you see immigrants who are, you know, close-minded. But it does happen. But I think that's a very simple formula that you can ask yourself, wherever you fall on the line. Am I the immigrant or am I the community? If you're a community, have your arms open. Say, this is what we believe. This is how America functions. This is the collective pop culture that we all subscribe to. You know, and assuming that the immigrant is as receptive and as open, you should be good to go. Should. Like I said, immigration's very, very nuanced, but these are just my 2 cents on what's currently going on. So thank you for watching.